A year ago, around this exact same time, I made a video about anime manga shippers because for some reason they thought that two characters in a show were going to come out together and be in a romantical relationship. And for those of you who have never heard of or have never seen My Hero Academia, this character is known as the bully. This character is his victim. And for some reason, throughout the entire show of seeing one character basically say fuck you to another one and calling them a loser, an insect, a bug, worthless, and all these things, people looked at these two fictional characters and thought, oh, they're gonna end up in a romantic relationship together, which speaks truth to power as to how delusional some people are with human interaction and connection. You're victims, and I hope you end up getting the help that you need. What I didn't expect is that a year later, this same concept would come back again, because, for those of you who don't know, Stranger Things is about to reach its end. And as of a few days ago, I believe it was on Christmas Day, we had more episodes come out before the season finale. And in the last episode, before it went on its little week hiatus, the character known as Will came out to his entire group of friends and family as gay, and it's created the reactions you could expect.
Since we're only 6 days away from Volume 1 of Stranger Things being dropped, I think it's important to say that a lot of you guys hate Noah Schnapp because he's gay and not because he's a Zionist, and I think that's really concerning. Like, I don't know, maybe we should refocus our hate and dread of a person into something that's actually negative about them instead of something that doesn't even matter. And seeing all that homophobic shit is just like really concerning, and it's like, okay, why are we regressing, bro? Like, him being gay never did anything, but him supporting a genocide did. Like, we should just focus on more important stuff. Thank you.
But I'm not focusing on too many of those because that speaks truth to the concept of people not understanding media literacy, and maybe I'll deal with that on a different day. What I want to draw my attention towards, and your attention to, are the people who wanted these two fictional characters to end up in a romantic relationship, because it's been something slowly hinted at, and in season 4 there was a not so subtle but subtle confession and hoping that the character that you're confessing your little feelings to could bite, but he didn't bite, and so you end up crying to the side off so nobody could see you and all that good shit. These people who are fans of these two characters getting in a relationship are now crying queerbait and homophobia.
I feel like people don't want Byler to happen because they feel like they were tricked. And that goes for mostly straight people and homophobic people. But I feel like that's why they want Mike and Eleven to end up together in the end, because they don't want Will and Mike to end up together, because then that means that they sat there and watched an entire series that was gay from beginning to end. Now, it might not have been obvious, but like in the end, if Mike and Will end up together, then it's basically a gay show. And then think about all the homophobic people who said that this was their favorite show. You know what I mean? And then the end ends up with a gay couple. I feel like that's a lot of the reason why these homophobic people don't want them to end up together in the end, because they feel like they were tricked and said that they love Stranger Things so much, and then it ends up being a gay show in the end. And it's just going to show a lot of hypocrisy, but it's not just homophobic people. I feel like obviously people just want Mike and Eleven to end up together for whatever reason that they want that to be. And that's also fine, but a lot of the conversation around Byler feels slightly homophobic. Yeah, and it just gives people feel like they're basically being tricked. And they were tricked into watching a gay show from beginning to end and loved it. And it's like, girl, it's okay. It's still a great show. Just because there's a gay couple at the end, that doesn't make it not a great show. Like, it can still be great. I don't understand what the problem is. Feels like you're mad that you watched a gay show from beginning to end, but, like, you still loved it. So what does that really say? And also, like, why does it matter? You know what I mean? A lot of the conversation around that just feels a little homophobic. I'm just gonna be honest.
So recently, for some reason, I didn't even think that this was going to be a debatable point, but here we are. People have been acting like if Byler doesn't happen, it would not be queerbait, and today I'm going to refute that, because I'm not gonna lie to you, that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. Genuinely, that sounds absolutely insane. Here's the thing. Stranger Things was meant to be made for the outcasts, for the freaks, the weirdos, the people who are different in society, right? A lot of queer people love Stranger Things. So this is their target audience that they have really heavily talked about, that they are trying to appeal the show to. The thing is, the show blew up past that said target audience. It has gotten much bigger than that. It basically has grown past its intended size. It was never meant to be this big. It was meant to be more of a small, intimate fan base, which is reflected in the way that the show is written. So here's the thing. If the target audience is queer people, and you hint at a queer relationship being endgame, that's queerbaiting if the relationship doesn't happen, in which creators hint at but do not depict a same-sex relationship. And if Byler is hinted at, but it's not depicted because they don't make it endgame, what would you call that? Just to clarify this, because I think a lot of people don't really understand this, just because Mike is in a relationship with 11, that doesn't mean that he's not queer-coded. Primarily because Maleven fucking sucks. Maleven is not well written. A lot of those writing inconsistencies can be drawn back to the fact that Mike might be queer. Mike is not a good boyfriend to 11. It's a terribly written relationship, and I think it's intentional, because if it's not intentional, then why the fuck did they write him like that? It's just bad. Now, what can we attribute those problems to? Maybe the fact that he doesn't truly love her, cause he's not straight. So no, to the people out there who are like, well, no, because it's been obvious that Mike loves 11. It hasn't been obvious. That's the point. If it was obvious, then we wouldn't have a debate about this. Lomax is obvious. 11 is not, and that is part of the problem. It's either poorly written, or Mike is a homosexual, and that explains why his behavior was like that, why he acted like that with her. Because why else would he be such a jackass? What are we talking about? Yes, he can still be queer-coded in a relationship with a girl, because he's masking, because he doesn't know what it is, because he's, get this, queer-coded, because he's struggling with internalized homophobia, and maybe that's why he was in a relationship with her in the first place. Like, do we get that?
Do I think Stranger Things, the show, is queerbaiting you? No. Do I think Stranger Things, the official Netflix account, the cast debriefs, the advertising of the show is queerbaiting? Yes, I do. Because it's important to remember that queerbaiting is about how the show is marketed. You're baiting queer people into watching and supporting the show under the guise that there is a potential queer relationship in it. And, you know, in Stranger Things, that potential queer relationship is Mike and Will. Now, if you just watch the show itself, and don't, look into symbolism or go on Tumblr, look at all the connections between the dialogue, the lighting, the everything, which I don't think you have to do, because I just don't think Stranger Things is that smart of a show to use all of that, then the story is obvious. You know, Mike is straight and in love with 11, and he's just kind of a poorly written character. He's dumb as rocks, he's not that smart, he's a bad friend, bad boyfriend, just all around a almost non-human character with how oblivious he is to everything, which is fine, which is totally I mean it's bad writing, but it's what's going on in the show. However, the advertising for the show almost treats Byler like a potentiality, which I don't enjoy. Not because I don't like Byler. I actually think the ship is really cute, and I think it's a more compelling story than the one we're actually seeing on screen. But if the advertising of the show can say, Will is gay and in love with Mike, why did they treat it like a spoiler that Mike is straight and in love with 11? When asked about where Byler will go, when Netflix accounts are responding to people, they're not saying, oh, Will is gay and in love with Mike, but Mike doesn't reciprocate, so we're going to see where that goes. Which I think is the impression of most people who watch the show, that that's what's happening. But instead of just laying that out plainly, they're coy about it. Just to look at interviews of the actors when asked questions about Byler, they're like, oh, can I speak? The Netflix account will tweets that treat it as a rivalry. And I'm not trying to blame individual actors. I don't think that they have to be super clear cut about everything. They don't have to answer questions with the show to avoid the concept of queerbaiting, but the duffers or Netflix or someone should be ensuring that they do that. Because if we're watching a show where it looks like Will is gay and in love with Mike, but Mike is straight and in love with 11, that should be said in the advertising instead of treating it like there's something to be revealed. Because the idea that there's something to be revealed implies that Mike actually is gay, because that would be the reveal, because we already know he is into 11.
I would just like to say, as somebody who's been watching the show since 2018 and has seen the progression and the drastic aging of all of these characters, you people are fucking delusional. It is commonly normal for somebody to be gay and have romantic feelings for someone else, and that person not reciprocate those feelings, and they go their separate ways or they remain friends. Just because you can't seem to have that normal interaction doesn't mean other people are supposed to be pigeonholed into either never associating with each other ever again or ending up just romantically lusting after each other until their dying days. And for some reason, people desperately want this specific thing, and if they don't get it, it's the end of the world. You motherfuckers are embarrassing to be a part of any fandoms. It's embarrassing how quick you will try to praise something and make up scenarios in your mind, and then when you don't get it in actuality, you somehow turn against everything that you've watched and you're no longer a fan. Which to me is very interesting, because if you watch the scene, it's been universally criticized on all sides. You got the people who don't want anything that has to do with woke in their TV shows, and you got people who will respond to that by saying you're homophobic. You got people who say it's perfectly fine that this is in the show, but the execution is terrible, because you have this guy who's now been traumatized by a villain into believing that if he comes out and he expresses who he truly is, it's gonna be all of his friends and family hating him. So he comes out in this really weird manner, at least as it's portrayed on the screen. And then you factor in that all of these people are just widely accepted, and it's the 80s, which means somebody in this room should have been confused or outright hated this, because given the time period, gay acceptance was not really a thing in the fucking 80s as much as people want to dream that it was.
I'm sorry, but statistically, one of the bitches in the room that Will came out to has to be homophobic. It's the 80s. You're telling me that no one was like, ew, I don't like gay people. Really? Nobody? I love acceptance, but that is just what?
I don't think Will's coming out scene was that bad. What? It's awful. It's awful for many reasons. One, because he's basically doing a Comic-Con panel to half of Hawkins about his sexuality, and, you know, this is 1980s Indiana. Are we just forgetting that aspect? But the real reason why it's so bad is because William Byers is being forced out of the closet because he's afraid his abuser will tell his secret and use it against him. That is not empowering. That is the opposite of empowering. Are we all meant to, like, watch that scene and go, oh, this is cute? Or people going, oh, the reason why he's telling everyone is so Vecna can't use it against him. That is not a good thing. My poor boy, my beautiful firstborn son, Will Byers, should have had, within his own time, come out to his mum, his brother, and his friends, instead of having a full-on press conference for half of Hawkins, so the big monster wouldn't be able to use his secret against him.
You have something that is across the spectrum heavily criticized, and yet the most annoying of the group are the people who are drastically calling things homophobic because they didn't get a romantical ship of two fake characters. And I'm sorry, that level of delusion is always going to be funny to me, because a show where the premise is small alien-esque child doing tricks with her mind, fighting aliens, demogorgons, and overall just sci-fi shit is circumvented by a bunch of people who just want to see two dudes kiss. And it's like, why are you that dramatic about it? The character in the show from jump was always laughed at and hinted at as being gay. Then he tries to come out to his interest. Interest is rejected, and then they still be friends. And then the big triumphant moment that's been heavily criticized. He comes out to his friends and family, and they accept him. No one shames him. No one shuns him. No one calls him the slur. It's probably the best you're gonna get out of one character in a show that refuses to fucking kill off any of these fucking characters, and it's just a complete room full of people, some of which should have died already. That's as good as you was gonna get. But for some reason, we have to have more, because if we don't have more, it's not proper representation. I'm sorry. Every gay person's not in a relationship. Every queer, asexual, bisexual, lesbian, they're all not in relationships. They've had moments where they thought a friend who they had interest in thought they were going to end up in a relationship with them, and it didn't happen. And you know what? The strongest are able to move on and find romantic love somewhere else. That's a real thing. I would make the argument. accurate representation of an outcome a lot of people are uncomfortable with: rejection. And it don't matter if you gay, straight, you've probably been rejected before, or your romantic interests have not been received the way you intended. And guess what? Dust yourself off, go find somebody that you can consensually fuck, and go about your life, because it ain't that deep, and it'll never be that deep, because you motherfuckers are paying $18 a fucking month for no ads on a streaming service that's about to start charging you more, because they might end up with Warner Brothers by the time I end up uploading this video.
Y'all don't care about Will for real. Because if you cared about Will, then you would want him to be with someone who's not already in a relationship. Since when has it been okay for someone to encourage another person to take someone else's boyfriend? Like, Will needed to accept himself so he can reach his max potential. Period. And I'm extremely proud of him. The conversation with him and Robin was about him accepting himself. So not only can he reach his max potential, but he can attract a person that's most aligned with him. When when Robin stopped focusing on Tammy, she found Vicky. And that's what she was telling Will to do. You need to stop focusing on Mike and focus on yourself, and then you will find your person. Then you will reach your highest potential. That is the whole point. Will going after Mike when he's, first of all, fuck him, Mike not being gay, he's with somebody. So you think that Will deserves the bottom of the barrel of taking someone else's boyfriend and not finding someone who loves and likes him out loud? It's fucking crazy.
So can we please, for the love of fuck, get to a point where we don't need to constantly hope and pine and get on our knees begging and pleading that we get a romantical ship, and if we don't get it, clearly they don't want to properly represent anybody. Clearly it's homophobia. Clearly we have issues with accepting gays in society.
Well, apparently people are watching Stranger Things for a totally different reason. The majority of us are watching it because we want to see what happens at the end of season 5. I'm not going to watch it any further. But some of y'all are watching it in hope for Byler. And I want to show y'all something. When I say I agree with whoever wrote this, I agree with whoever wrote this. Y'all do understand that Mike is not owed to Will. Just because they are a friendship, just because Will came out, it doesn't mean that he is owed a relationship with Mike. Not only that, it's just invalidating both of the characters' experiences. It is invalidating their existence on the show in its entirety. This is creating or pushing the narrative that people who are and identify as gay or in that community can just will or lure their crushes into a relationship just because they admit to those feelings. And I think that people, just because Robin did it and she came out to her friend and that ended up into a relationship, that the same thing was going to happen for Will and Mike. And it's also not just that, it's the fact that you all are sexualizing children in this series. And some people will argue and say this is not a children's show. I'm not saying it is. But let's not negate the fact that 12-year-olds are the ones who started this whole series and that they are the main focal point of the show. And this just goes beyond the characters. This goes into the actual people themselves. Noah Schnapp and Finn Wolfhard. Like, all of them collectively have played on this show since 2015. So to ask them to do something like that just because you all want to be entertained by it, it's kind of weird. At this point, I would also assume that they're probably considered to each other like brothers. You know what I'm saying? So for y'all to keep pushing this theory, for y'all to keep pushing this narrative or hoping that Byler happens, and I hope this happens at the end of the season, it's just weird. And it just shows your intentions for watching the show is not because you actually like fiction or science fiction. It's because you want to see some type of theoretic relationship blossom out of this that shouldn't happen. I feel like it negates Will's entire existence and his whole coming to and coming out and just accepting who he is.
Some of you people who are shippers are hilariously delusional, and I'm here to burst the bubble. You cannot, in every single show that you watch, get the outcome that you want, which is two characters, whether they actually have romantic chemistry or whether if they're friends or if they're a fucking bully and a victim of being bullied. You can't always get them kissing at the end of the story. That's what your fan fiction is for, where you could craft the story in ways that you want because you have free will to do so. But in the actual canonical series that go on, it's probably not going to happen. And no, it's not homophobia. It's not them queerbaiting. It's not them being against you. It's you being against actually looking at the screen and seeing what's on the screen. Friends, adversaries, rivals, and them actually being friends, adversaries, or rivals. Not you looking at them and you seeing yourself and how your bully actually made you feel less than about yourself, but you went home and rubbed one down because you thought maybe one day you and them were going to kiss under the stars. Be ashamed of yourself and actually take the time to understand characters before you just randomly put them in a box to where if they're not canonically gay or they don't canonically kiss, you somehow feel personally attacked. And for everybody else, that is it for this video. And I will welcome all thoughts about Stranger Things in the comment section down below. How good or bad is your media literacy? Because I'll tell you, once this volume 1 and 2 came out, it was clear as day who was paying attention to Stranger Things from the jump and who was just sitting there wanting to be mad on social media about something. And I will see you all in the next one. Subscribe. Mwah. Goodbye.